Joining us now from Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport in Atlanta is MS Now's Ariel Hickson. And also with us, Sarah Saldana, former ICE director in the Obama administration, and Ashley Parker, MS Now political analyst and staff writer for The Atlantic. So, Ariel, you're at one of these hardest hit airports. What do wait times look like right now in Atlanta today? And what are you hearing about the presence, or what are you seeing when it comes to ICE at the airport?
Well, and I have to tell you that passengers are still shell-shocked from the images that they saw yesterday. They're arriving here 4 to 5 hours earlier from their flights. But if you can see behind me, wait times have improved significantly. Right now, they're about 5 to 10 minutes. So passengers are walking in here looking at the wait times and saying, hey, I'm relieved, a bit frustrated that on the back end they have to wait after they get through security about 3 hours or so. Yet I spoke to some TSA officers who tell me that they've actually moved TSA officers from one area to the other to help with congestion. And there's still a big fact here. 40% of TSA officers at this airport alone have called out sick. And at this point, they're still not getting paid. And that's what the sentiment from many passengers is. That's why so many of them are having so much grace for these TSA officers, really asking for Congress to do something. Take a listen.
At first, we was going to come in at 8 o'clock if the lines was going to be that long, because they said it was an 8-hour time. So, and I understand TSA, I feel so bad for them, but, you know, we still was going to plan on coming at least 4 to 5 hours early, because we understand.
I was prepared to sleep. I was prepared to wait in line. I was going to change my shoes. I was like, I'm not going to be standing in line for too long. But it's definitely a relief to see that it's not too crazy here right now.
Now, Anna, I have to mention that we have seen groups of ICE officers walking back and forth around the airport. I actually spoke to an ICE officer off camera and asked him, okay, so what is your mission here? And he said, quote, to support TSA officers. I asked, can you use force? And he said, quote, whatever it takes. I've talked to some passengers as well who said that they are a bit intimidated by just the presence of them here at this airport. Anna.
Ariel Hickson, keep us posted. Thank you. It's good to see those lines moving again. But Ashley, it's unclear whether ICE actually helped or if it was just a repositioning of certain TSA officers there. Let's take a look at these numbers, because according to DHS, TSA call-out rates as of Sunday were around 40% at some of the major airports, from Newark to New York to New Orleans and Atlanta. But considering the frustration with ICE across the country right now, does the administration really see this solution as a political winner?
Well, again, I was so struck by what the ICE agent off camera said about, you know, our mission here is to support, because that very much reminds me when the National Guard deployed to cities across the country. I did a story on that. I live here in Washington, D.C. I work in Washington, D.C. And I remember asking some of the National Guard troops the exact same question, and I got the exact same answer. We're here to support. But in practice, you know, anecdotally, from what I observed and what I reported, there wasn't much they were actually doing. They were helping mulch flower beds, you know, sort of like little Boy Scouts, which, again, is not unhelpful. But the reason they were deployed was allegedly to combat crime. And there were areas where crime was occurring, where crime occurred, for instance, in front of National Guard members as they were eating lunch, and they did nothing. So the here to support is fairly vague and amorphous, and it does not necessarily seem to be helping with those call-out numbers or some of those wait times, although I do understand in Atlanta those waits got shorter. But what President Trump likes about ICE is he has always wanted his sort of own military force that would do what he told it to do, right, and not have, you know, his generals push back on him. And ICE is the closest agency that he gets to that, where he can deploy them across the country in various situations, and they show up where he wants them to show up. But to answer your original question, if the waits at the airports are long, this is fundamentally a political problem. It's also a tangible travel problem that ICE is not going to fix for this president or for Republicans who are up in November.
And others have said it could be a national security problem, too, with extra long lines. And you have the people who are highly trained when it comes to explosives and other potential risks to travelers going through some of these security checkpoints. Sarah, we're hearing a lot of these ICE agents aren't trained properly to screen passengers. They can't check IDs as far as their role there. And we're seeing a lot of video of ICE agents seemingly just milling around, like you see at a few of the airports here in these videos. You led ICE. Practically speaking, what could these agents do to help out?
Well, that is the question, and I'm very curious about that response, about whatever it takes, because it doesn't look like they are doing much other than milling around and being available. It just seems like you don't need a well-trained law enforcement agency to do that kind of thing. I agree with Ms. Parker. I believe there is a political motive behind picking ICE in particular to be at these airports. I think I saw one statement from the president saying, this is what we're going to do to you Democrats unless you all respond, which sounds more like a threat than trying to actually ease the situation. So I'm proud of the employees at ICE. I had 20,000 of them when I led ICE. But they have been so diminished in terms of their overall very important national security mission, their reputation. It is very sad for me to see, because this is not what they were meant to do, and it just further undermines, I think, their overall mission.
And Sarah, the president has made a big deal about the fact that ICE agents at the airports aren't wearing masks, even though they are frequently masked up during the immigration enforcement operations we've seen around the country. What do you make of that change?
Well, I hope it's a step in the right direction. Masks, it can be important in certain operations, particularly with respect to when you're chasing dangerous criminals. However, obviously they've been used for more than that. Quite frankly, I think it's kind of part of the character role they're playing to look even more intimidating, which is not necessary for 90% of what they do. But perhaps it is a step towards, we will concede on this point, other than in certain situations to give up masks in general. And I would like to see that. There, of course, was a concern about the safety of ICE agents. That's a very important consideration. But I don't think there's going to be a problem at the airports, and I'm glad to see it. And there really isn't. Given what we did while we were at ICE, an essential part of the uniform to wear those masks, other than perhaps further intimidation of the general public.
Ashley, we heard there has been even delays for NTSB investigators to get to LaGuardia after the collision there because of these long TSA lines. I wonder, could stories like that really break through to lawmakers and maybe dislodge the jam up when it comes to DHS funding?
Potentially. I mean, what you see, speaking broadly, is that when voters are making, first of all, is that lawmakers fundamentally react to voters and their constituents. And of course, on the Republican side, to President Trump. And voters make decisions on things that tangibly affect their daily lives. That's why we spend so much time, rightfully, talking about affordability, inflation, interest rates, the cost of gas, the cost of groceries. But especially this season, where, we're already into spring break and schools across the country have spring breaks coming up for the next few weeks. Going to the airport, having to get there 5 or 6 hours early, missing your flight. These are tangible things that affect real people in their real lives that they will be sharing with their elected officials, that they are already sharing on social media and in videos. And it could have that impact you asked about.